welcome everyone. This is Rick Kaufman, your host, and welcome to DW Nation. Hey, we have two guests with us here today. We've got Bobby Hazen with End Drowning Now and Respect the Water, and we've got ReesSpecht, which his son Rees drowned right before Hurricane Sandy. And just so everybody knows here, I'm going to give them a little opportunity here to introduce themselves, but we'll also have in our notes, we had both these gentlemen on our podcast a little bit over a year ago, or Bobby, I think, was in July. Rich, you were maybe in the spring of last year, but we'll make sure we have those so you can go back and really hear their stories and hear what they're all about. But I think we're living through some unprecedented times right now. Water safety, everybody, we are extremely concerned. The focus and everybody's fixated on the coronavirus, which is probably a good thing. We need to take care of that. But I've been saying that the coronavirus is a sprint to the finish line. We've got to fix that problem. But water safety is a marathon. We're in the race and we've got to keep this going. So welcome, guys. Well, Bobby, just want to say hey to you. And also Rich, want to say hey. Bobby, we'll start with you. So tell us just a little bit about what you're doing right now.
Hey guys, how are you? How's our water safety friends out there? Definitely some crazy times, but we'll make it through like we always do. And I've been in the business for over 23 years now. I have a passion for water safety. I work for Safety Swim Schools, which is a streamlined brand school now. And we teach anywhere between 10 to 13,000 kids a week. And unfortunately, during this crazy times, we're not able to do that, which breaks my heart. And, I'd love to talk about the effects that this is having on potential drownings going forward and the risks of those rising. And then, obviously share with you some of the really exciting things that we're trying to do as far as getting people engaged and how they can educate themselves at home, why the kids are home. So that's a little bit about what I would love to talk about once we get going.
Rich, tell us a little bit, because people that might be listening to the audio, they don't see the video here. So in the video, you guys have the same logo, so you guys are kind of connected also. So Rich, tell us a little bit about just a little bit about Rees, and then maybe a little bit how the two of you got together.
Oh, good morning, Rich. First of all, thank you for having me on today, and Bobby. My background is, as you pointed out, we had lost my son Rees 2 days before Superstorm Sandy hit, and it was an accidental drowning as I was getting ready for the storm. I had asked a friend to help out and watch Rees while I was doing it, and it was just a simple miscommunication between the two of us that led to Rees being unsupervised, and he wandered off into our backyard and fell in a pond, and unfortunately he drowned. And when we had started the foundation in his name, everyone always asked me too, like, oh, you named your son Rees and your last name is Specht. That's cruel. That's actually not the case. He's named after me, actually, and my father. And my mother-in-law noticed that his initials spelled out Rees, Richard Edwin Amer Specht. And she's like, oh, we could use that as a way to differentiate you two. And we'll call him Rees. And I'm like, no, we can't do that. It'll be ReesSpecht. That's terrible. You can't have that. Mm-hmm. So she said, no, we're going to do this. And it kind of stuck. And, after Rees had died, we had all these, amazing acts of kindness done for us, especially considering what we had kind of gone through, this shared misery on Long Island, which I have to say a lot of this coronavirus stuff is kind of bringing me back to that, because it's very, it's very similar, the way people are kind of rallying around each other, at least in my neighborhood. And so I'm seeing that again, and in some ways it's bittersweet. But we had a landscaper come to my house and offer to do, clean up my yard from the storm, and wouldn't take anything in return. And we tried to pay him back, and he wouldn't accept it. And when I had asked him, why did he do this? Why? And he's like, well, it's respect. And, he didn't know my son's name. He didn't know his nickname at all. And so that kind of stuck. And so we'd started a foundation to pay back the kindness we had received. So we were all about kindness. I wanted nothing. I had been asked if we were interested in doing anything in water safety and drowning prevention. And I said, no, I have no interest in being involved in that because, I failed at it. And I felt like if we were to get involved, it would be, hypocritical. Who am I? I mean, I lost my son to a drowning and now I'm going to talk about how you can prevent it. So I didn't want anything to do with it. And about a year into the foundation's existence, we had been honored at another foundation on Long Island had honored us for our work in the community for what we were doing, which I didn't think was deserved, to be perfectly honest, because all we were doing is asking people to be kind. We gave out these little kindness cards and hope to inspire other acts of kindness. And, it started with 500 of them. We did 500 random acts of kindness in Reese's name, and we gave out a card for each one. And it kind of took on a life of its own. And by that time, a year in, it had grown to like 40,000 cards that we had given out. And here we are 7 years later. Now it's 670,000 and it's worldwide. But so when we were honored, I had met Bobby Hazen that night because he was also being honored for his work in the community in drowning prevention. And the head of the foundation that had honored us is like, oh, I got to get you two together. And when I met him, my first words to him were like, hi, I love what you're doing, but I want nothing to do with drowning prevention. So basically it was just to blow him off. I didn't want, I was, very cordial and very nice, had to be kind. But I said, nope, don't want anything to do with it, and tried to send him on his way. And Bobby, he's very persistent. If you know Bobby, that's who he is. And, it's honestly, I think it's one of his greatest strengths. He's persistent and, and he's just driven. And he was like, no, I'm not letting you go. So he kept reaching out to me and said, I'd love to sit down and just talk to you. I just want you to see what we're doing. And I had resisted for so long, but eventually I was like, I just got to get this guy off my back. And I went to go meet with him. And I met him at his office at Safety Swim. And he was a district manager at Safety Swim as well. So he wasn't just working with, the drowning prevention aspect, which he was doing on his own, which, I came to really admire. Because I at first I couldn't separate him from the swim school aspect of it, and I realized later that what he was doing was of his own volition, and I was really impressed by that. But when I went to go meet with him, I sat down across from his desk, and I'm just like, oh, let's get this over with. And just as I sit down, he's sitting across from me, and I see there's just a little logo for their swim school behind him, and it said Safety Swim, where kids learn to love and respect the water. And as soon as I saw ReesSpecht the water, it hit me. And he didn't have to say a word. And I just looked at him and I said, oh my God, I'm looking at your logo now and I see it. And I was like, you know what? I'm on board. And he looked at me like, I didn't even say anything. And, I just saw that, the ReesSpecht and I was like, there's something to this. And so Bobby had explained to me that the Long Island Drowning Prevention Task Force, which is the original name of the organization he had started, was doing these school assemblies, trying to teach children directly all the aspects of water safety. And he knew I was an educator because at the time I was still teaching science in schools. And he kind of wanted some of my input on it. And I was like, yeah, I'll gladly offer that and see what we can do. But our relationship evolved as my own personal situation evolved, because I went from being a science teacher to I actually transitioned out of teaching because I had been asked after our kindness cards had taken off. I had been asked by a local college to come speak to them about what we had experienced as a family and as a foundation with our kindness initiative, and this idea that chain reaction of kindness was real and that it's something that makes a difference. So I ended up speaking to a group of college students that were incoming freshmen at Stony Brook University, and it was a big hit. And a bunch of teachers were in the audience, and they asked, oh, can you come speak at my school? And I was like, yeah, I mean, if I can work it out, obviously, the time you're running is the time I'm at work. So, if we can work things out, we will. And so they got me into a couple schools, and each school that I went to, like, oh, you got to go speak to this school. And I was like, I can't do this. I can't do both. And so I eventually actually said, all right, I'm going to try to make a go at this and see if I can make a program where I do this full time and I leave teaching. And so I did. And obviously that coincided exactly with what the Long Island Drowning Prevention Task Force was doing. So Bobby's like, let's combine it. Let's do it together. And I said, all right, but the first thing we have to do is change the name, because the Long Island Drowning Prevention Task Force, that does not roll off the tongue. And I was like, we need to get to the point. We need a name that is, succinct, tells people why we're doing what we're doing, and, takes less than 20 minutes to pronounce. And so, we put our heads together and we came up with End Drowning Now, which honestly, I think that's as succinct as it can get. And the program we were going to do was ReesSpecht the Water, which was obviously a play on Safety Swim's motto, and obviously a play on my son's name, and, tied in directly with what we were doing. And that's kind of where it started. And at first, the shows that they were doing were they were actually using material from another water safety foundation, and we wanted to start including some of our stuff, because I had written a children's book in that time too, that was I basically created a fictional character called a Little ReesSpecht. I had written this story, and the story came about because we had an original logo for the foundation that we had put on our cards that had Rees dressed as Superman, because that's my last picture of him. The night before he died, he had tried on his Halloween costume, and it was a Superman costume. And so my last picture of him was him dressed as Superman. So when we had these cards printed up, these ReesSpecht Life kindness cards, the picture was of him dressed as Superman. And when those cards started to take off and we started getting media attention, I had a lawyer reach out to me to tell me, you can't use that. That's copyright infringement. I'm like, oh my God, and at that point, like I said, we had over 40,000 cards distributed. And I thought that was the end of the world. So I'd asked my friend, can you come up with a new logo, something that obviously has meaning but doesn't copyright infringe anybody, or isn't anyone else's intellectual property? And he said, yeah. Well, what's something that Rees really liked? And Rees's favorite thing was tractors. He loved tractors, and it was just his thing. Every time he saw a tractor, he got so excited. So I said, all right, he's got to be on a tractor, and but there's got to be a reason for it. Like, why is he on a tractor? Because obviously the superhero aspect, I had played that off as this is our superpower. Kindness is our superpower. I was like, how do you relate a tractor to kindness? And my wife looks at me and she goes, he's planting the seeds of kindness. He's cultivating kindness. And I'm like, that's it. Perfect. So my friend made this new logo, and with that new logo, I'm like, there's a story there. So I ended up writing a children's book based on the new logo that we had to do, because our logo was basically being forced to be changed. And so this new children's book that I had written about this little farmer named Little ReesSpecht, who discovers that kindness is like a seed that, with each kind act, you can continue to grow it. I had written the book, and it took off. I self-published it and everything, but, it started selling on its own. We actually, to this day, we've sold over 20,000 copies.
Oh, wow.
And so that took on a life of its own. And I said, well, let's use that character then. And so, we had a logo made up for ReesSpecht the Water that used, the animated version of Rees. So if you're watching the podcast, you can see it in our logo. Bobby's, started doing the shows using that, saying, with the ReesSpecht the Water campaign. And then as we evolved even further, I said, well, let's go all the way, because it was around that time I had been approached by some producers in Hollywood who had gotten a copy of my book, and they were interested in turning the characters in my book into an animated television series. And I was floored. I'm like, oh my God, this can't be real, but it was. And, long story short, we ended up getting into the process of developing a pilot. And as that process was starting, I said to Bobby, I said, we could make something for the water safety aspect too. Let's do them both. If we're going to put this money out to make a pilot, we could piggyback the two and really save some money and do them together. And so we had, as the pilot for our kindness television series was being produced, we also had a animated short that was based on a script that Bobby and I had written for water safety, in which Little ReesSpecht meets Splash, the mascot of Safety Swim, the Safety Swim seal, and they discuss water safety. And Splash teaches Rees all the aspects of how to be safer around the water. And that was about 7 minutes long. And the idea was we wanted to make it something that you could use in a live action presentation that you could interact with. And because the show Bobby had been doing required 3 people to do it, it had a puppet show involved, it had, you know, singing and dancing and characters. And I said, we got to narrow this down so that one person can do it. And if we could do that and still incorporate all those aspects of it being interactive and having that, you know, that singing and dancing and all of the aspects that you had, except only one person, I said, that would be great. So we designed the animation so that it could do that, so that you could interact with, you know, Reese on the screen and Splash, and it became like this seamless thing. That video also, we could record it where you had someone just taking on the role of the presenter that you would normally have live, doing a version that we could post online, which we did. We uploaded to YouTube last year, and we just uploaded an updated version this year. This year, we had done a couple shows last year as a kind of a pilot of the new program, and it went great. And we were approached when Safety Swim had been acquired by Streamline. I had been approached by Streamline. They loved what we were doing, and they thought, you know, this was definitely something to work on. And they had asked me, they said, you know, we'd love to help you. And it was all of their own volition. I mean, they reached out to me and they said, you know, I think what you're doing is great, and let's see if we can build this out and get these school shows to really grow. Because obviously we're on Long Island, but the idea was let's make it national. And so they partnered with us and helped us develop the program so that we could branch it out. And we were getting ready. It was so exciting. We're like, all right, we're gonna roll out this show this year, and you know, we had everything in place, and it was, you know, I had this amazing collaboration with the people over at Streamline, and everything was just, you know, running on all 4 cylinders. And then the coronavirus hit, and it just shot it all down. And so our hopes of rolling out this new program this year, kind of, you know, they've been you know, the brakes have been put on because obviously, you know, if we do this, we want to do it right. And so now we kind of have to wait and see where things go this year. And, you know, hopefully there's not too much collateral damage in terms of, you know, drowning statistics with everyone being home. And I, you know, like I said to Bobby, we're not getting the word out. You know, the water safety shows had reached over 70,000 kids already. And I said, you know, we're missing out on these kids this year that you know, we're getting this message out to. So that's honestly what scares me, but that's honestly also what drives me too, because I want to educate people, because that's what I am. End of the day, I'm still an educator. I may have left the classroom, but my classroom just became bigger and well, spread out all over the place. But you know, the idea that is, I want to get that word out, because you know, when people ask me what killed Reese, my first answer is ignorance. You know, it was my ignorance of all the aspects of water safety. You know, I thought I knew it all. I thought, you know, we had self-locking gates in my backyard that was around my backyard, not around the pond, but around in the backyard. We had alarms on our doors so that anytime a door was opened, it would chime. And that was every door. I had asked a friend to come watch Reese. You know, I was a good parent. I kept my eyes on my kids. So, you know, not knowing all the aspects and all the layers of protection is what cost me, because the one thing I didn't know is that he could have started swim lessons at 3 months old, and we didn't do that. And so when he fell into that 18-inch deep pond, 18 inches, that's it, he panicked and he drowned. And, you know, had I known what I know now, had I not been as ignorant as I was then, I wouldn't have Reese's story today. I wouldn't be here doing what I'm doing. And, you know, and I know that's a fact, because my daughter Melina was born 2 years after Reese had passed. And we started her in swim lessons at 3 months old with Bobby. So Bobby was her swim instructor. And I can tell you for a fact that had that situation fallen on her, it would have been nothing. It'd have been a non-event. And I mean, I wouldn't be here today. So, you know, when it comes down to it, to me, that was that ignorance. And so that's why this education is so important. That's why I'm kind of bummed out about this whole coronavirus thing, because it's kind of harder to educate and have these, you know, you see these groups of people in the pictures behind me. It's kind of the opposite of what we can do right now. So, you know, it's frustrating.
Bobby, you and Rich kind of hooked up here, and you guys got a great mission. And Bobby, you wear multiple hats, not only, you know, working with a large swim school, drowning prevention with the NDPA. Also, I believe you're on the board of the United States Swim School Association too. And
That is correct.
so you're a busy person on the front of water safety. And so you have interaction with a lot of people. And like Rich just talked about with this coronavirus and having to kind of rethink things, how's this impacting swim schools? How's this impacting, not just, and you guys are in Long Island, so you're surrounded by water and the weather's getting warmer, kids are home, and we know the numbers, we are very afraid that the drowning numbers, we haven't seen maybe in the data yet, but the fallout of this is going to be much bigger than the actual virus itself. That's what I'm afraid of. But because it's going to impact the businesses, the swim schools, financially, whether or not their clientele will come back or their employees will come back. All these things that's taking place. What can you tell us a little bit about how it's affecting you and what you're seeing in the industry and how that's impacting, say, water safety?
Well, obviously, there's not swim lessons going on right now across the country. So that alone is making a huge statement to what potentially could be a very, very large spike in drownings across the country. I mean, we already have the swim pools open down in the south. I'm sure they'll open sooner than they normally would in the north and the northeast because people are home. We have people going to the beaches right now without lifeguards. So I'm very, very fearful that the drowning stats will increase. I mean, think about it. We probably have hundreds of thousands of families that are not receiving swim lessons right now. I mean, I know that there's some stats that are coming out today from the United States Swim School Association, where we only had a report of maybe 40% or 48% of swim schools that came in, and that's over 200,000 kids right there. So and that, so that's not even the full number yet. So, think about just that alone. You're talking about probably 400,000 kids or more that aren't even receiving the opportunity to learn how to save themselves. Mm-hmm. And then Rich brought up a point before where, moms and dads are obviously at home. They're preoccupied. They're worried. They're trying to figure out about how they're going to pay for the bills, or they've lost their job, or they're furloughed right now. So they're not necessarily as attentive as they might be either, and not necessarily have all the layers of protection that we could have or should have. So that's why I think it's really important that we still figure out a way to get the education out there. Let's utilize the platforms that we have available to us now, with people like you and the NDPA next week, where we can really use the technology that we have to educate these families and these children at home, why they're home and why they're being at home and being forced to stay inside, and so that they don't put themselves in a dangerous situation. Their house is protected. If they do go to the beach, they know what the rules and regulations are, so they keep themselves safe. I think that's where we really need to focus, and people like yourself and the presentations next week at the NDPA will help with that. And I think that's really where we need to go with it.
I know we were closed. The schools here were closed, I think, up through the end of this week, but then they extended it till the end of April. I know we have foster children here, and they were kindergartners, first graders. We have a high school daughter here, and my grandchild. Most of them had schoolwork that lasted them for a couple of weeks that was sent home. Haven't heard anything about additional schoolwork being sent home. So families are looking for educational material. I know Heather's in here watching, and she's asked about, programs, things like this that could be put out to, their children, their communities. And I know yours has always been tailored towards, assemblies. Are you, I know with the video, and there's a lot of information out there online. Is there someplace somebody can go to if they're looking for, say, some water safety education to, sit down with their kids and spend some time, to keep them busy, number one, but be able to give them good practical information that they can utilize? I mean, what would you tell a parent if they're looking for that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously we did release our two animated shorts that Rich was speaking about before. those are on YouTube, and you could just do a search on YouTube for ReesSpecht the Water, spelled the way that you see on there, ReesSpecht, and the water. And those will pop up. You'll be able to watch those. They're fun. They're easy for the kids to watch. And then there's a song attached to it that Rich will probably talk about in a few minutes that helps explain the purpose of that animation and how the kids can then remember it. It uses an acronym with Splash's name. But also they can go to our website for End Drowning Now, www.enddrowningnow.org. And it is loaded with facts and stats and water safety tips for around the house, pool safety, ocean and beach safety, open water safety if you're going out boating. Everything that you need to learn is there.
Where you're at, when do the lifeguards go? Is it like Memorial Day weekend, or is that where you usually see lifeguards going on duty?
Memorial Day weekend, or in some cases even July 4th weekend. So I mean, up here it's more Memorial Day weekend, but think about it, that's still 2 full months away. So I mean, and I'm sure it's the same situation down in the South. So I'm worried that people aren't going to heed the warnings of not going in the water without being in a lifeguarded area. That's so important, especially at the ocean.
Here it is, April 1st. So this is not an April Fool's joke. So it's we have Water Safety Month. Water Safety Awareness Month is just, around the corner. It starts the 1st of May. April, I know those of us in the water safety community, advocates, business, and people that, talk water safety, we utilize April as a month to really kind of get geared up and ready for the month of May, to have that momentum, carry us, into the month of May to get the word out. And so all the things that have been the norm, like the NDPA conference, all the other conferences have been canceled. The NDPA has went to a virtual conference to try to get education and information out to the advocates and people in the business and everything. So that's still going to be taking place. And that's going to be a huge problem, I think, with what you're talking about, with what you're saying, that, there's going to be so many people that potentially could fall through the cracks here, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's why it's so important to try to figure out ways that we can reach the moms, the dads, the parents, the caregivers at home, educate them any way we can. I think it's fantastic that the NDPA came up with a way to do that. Instead of canceling their Fort Worth show, they worked out a way to do a virtual conference, so everybody can attend the conference that wanted to, or that was going to still, and be able to see the presentations anytime they want during the week, instead of having to go to the conference and not be able to see every presentation because they can't be in 2 places at once. Now they're going to have the opportunity to do that. So hopefully that will actually reach more people, not less. Mm-hmm. Rich and I will be actually presenting at that conference next week. So it runs from April 7th through April 9th. We're doing a presentation very similar to what we've talked about today, but at a little bit more depth. And we just need to educate as many people as we possibly can. Let's not forget the Great Lakes either. With those lakes opening up after Memorial Day, and the concerns there with people going swimming in regular lakes and the big lakes, there's a lot of dangers there as well. So.
Right. Are you seeing anything as far as the data and the numbers? Because I know my news feed is like really dried up as far as, anything being reported about drownings or and what's going on in the water safety community, because all the focus is on the coronavirus. Are you seeing any spikes, any upward trends right now, or hearing about that?
I mean, obviously Florida and Texas are always, in situations where, they have a lot of drownings or a lot of incidents. I know there was a drowning, I believe last week in Texas. I think they're at 6 or 7 already this year. One of them was a baby in a bathtub. Mm-hmm. Once again, that's another instance where you're home and you kind of lose touch of what you need to do as far as layers of protection, and bathtub can be a danger as well. So, I mean, these are the kinds of things that we have to be talking about and educating every mom, dad, and caregiver about. Right. All forms of water safety, landscape ponds, like Rich's tragic story. Mm-hmm. Just buckets of water in the backyard after a rainstorm. I mean, everything can become a danger that has water in it. So right. You can drown. So a baby can drown as little as 2 inches of water. So we have to make sure everybody's safe.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to that, because one of the things that I had mentioned to Bobby too that scares me is that, just in my own experience, in what I've seen with my family here, sequestered for, I said to my wife last night, I'm like, how long has this been? I was like, it feels like forever. She goes, oh, it's only 2.5 weeks. And I'm like, Jesus, it feels like, honestly, my whole life. And, my my oldest daughter's 15. And last night she was complaining about, not being able to see her friends, and I had said to her, I'm like, it's not unique to you. I was like, we're all in this together. And I realized that, we're all kind of individually suffering, but together as well. It's this weird, dynamic. And the thing that struck me though is that, as that starts to wear down, I think parents are going to get to this point where there's just going to be this exhaustion, like, oh my God, I can't keep my eyes on them all the time. And that to me is the scariest part, because I think you're going to see more of that. You're going to see more of, the parents just being like, oh my God, this is just a routine now. And that the kids go off and do their own thing. And, that's the dangerous part. And so for me, that's where I'm concerned, because, if you don't have this knowledge and you don't have this education and you are ignorant of the aspects of water safety, that becomes, another danger that, and if you don't know that a danger exists, you can't do anything to prepare for it.
Right.
And, so getting the message out, I think, is even more imperative right now. But, there's a lot of chatter too. You have to filter through all the noise. I know with my daughters and my wife's still a teacher. I see what she's going through as a teacher. They are all trying to scramble to figure out a new dynamic to teaching that, she spent 20 years as an educator doing basically one thing. And now her whole world's been flipped upside down, trying to figure out a way to get the information across to her students in a way that's completely alien to her. And the kids are the same way. I'm getting to see it from both ends, watching my daughters trying to adapt. And, so there's a bunch out there. So, you mentioned that some parents are looking for resources. That very well would be, well, may be the case, but unfortunately, I think there's so much out there now. Like my daughter printed out like 200 pages of notes or something yesterday, and I was like, what is this? So I think filtering through the noise is important. And I think the best way to do that is to be, like kind of with the name of End Drowning Now, you got to be to the point, succinct, and get it out there quick, which is why I think, the video is a great way to do it. Bobby had mentioned Splash's acronym. So I don't know if I can share my screen. Does that work?
You should be able to.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So this is Splash's acronym right here. And, to me, this is as succinct and as to the point as you can get. So, we've made Splash's name basically convey the aspects of water safety that we're teaching the kids. So S is swim lessons, because to me, that's paramount. P, put away toys, put up the ladder, obviously around any body of water, especially, it could be a landscape pond, anything like that. Life jackets when you're out on the water. And I know actually in Florida, a lot of people are going out on the water. My cousin, he's out on his boat every day. He's like, well, if I got to be isolated, I'll be isolated out on my boat. So obviously that would be something that's really important. Adults always watching. And to me, that's the scariest one, because I think that's what's going to break down. And that's what I'm really worried about. Shutting all gates, obviously, around any water source, and obviously having a self-locking, self-latching gate would be ideal. And then actually knowing how to rescue, H for how to rescue. So, to me, getting that point out as quickly as possible and as succinctly as possible is really important. And, so there you go. There's a message, just get it out and reinforce it.
Right. Oh, no, that's awesome. And then Heather just made a comment here too. This is great. She said she's never seen this before. So again, emphasizing the importance of, people need to hear this. I get what you say when you talk about ignorance, because it's a common theme we hear from parents who've lost children. In my case, it's what I didn't know. I thought I was doing everything right. I thought, I didn't know I needed to have that talk with the babysitter. I didn't, I trusted this person, or I trusted that, and it's just a common theme. You mentioned having your daughter in swim lessons at 3 months of age, where she would have fell into the pond that it would be a non-event for her. And that's the same thing. My daughter would have had that simple skill. She'd be here today too. And the coronavirus has really changed the way a lot of us are having to interact, how we have to do our business. And but at the same time, maybe this new media, the way we're communicating now, maybe we can reach people that maybe normally we would never reach. But then, Bobby, with the problem with that is that we can't get them into swim schools. We could educate them till we're blue in the face, but if we can't teach them how to swim or teach them that skill, it's like, how do we keep them out of the water until they learn? Right?
Yeah, it's really about just trying to keep them engaged. I mean, we like I said, we have anywhere between 10,000 and 13,000 swimmers with us now that were not receiving lessons just at our swim school. So, imagine 200, 300, 400,000 kids across the country that are not receiving lessons. How do we keep them engaged, and how do we keep the parents that were thinking about joining and getting those kids lessons now? We're usually, this is prime crazy season for us, from now through August. So how do we get those parents engaged? And I think the best way is to just reach out to them, ask a question, give them information like Rich was talking about. The more feeds that we can give them, social media, and just even ask questions about, hey, do you know these stats? Did you know this? Did you know that? And get them starting to ask their own questions and start passing and sharing that information around via social media and via moms groups and via parent groups. I think is the best way that we can do it. Any way that we can keep the parents and the caregivers engaged, I think is unfortunately the only way that we can make this happen. And then organizations like this and the NDPA and End Drowning Now and Stop Drowning Now, all of them, just staying united for one central cause so that we can get this message out to everybody.
And Rich, is there anything, as we get ready to start to wrap up, is there anything that you feel important we need to touch on as far as with, I know you've covered a lot as far as your assemblies and everything, but if there's somebody listening right now, is there something that you feel that you really need to say to them?
Well, yeah, I think, Bobby, you mentioned that, the swim schools being closed, and we list Splash's message, Splash, SPLASH. The first S is swim lessons. And that's, like I said, that to me is paramount. And obviously that's been removed right now. So, but you can't have Splash without those two S's. So, it doesn't work with Plash.
Right.
And,
right.
So the only other way then, if your kids aren't learning how to swim right now, the only other aspects you have are the other layers of protection, which again, if you're not aware of them, that is deadly. And, so yeah, getting the word out to me is paramount right now. Anything that any of us, Rich, you had mentioned that you see this shared thread that, we all, the story that you see with, any parent who, and it doesn't have to just be drowning. It could be any type of accident that took a child. This idea that I didn't know. And yeah, it's absolutely true. I mean, I remember my first NDPA conference was 2 years ago. And that was my first experience with Families United against, for drowning prevention. And, we went around that night and we shared our stories. And the thing that struck me is that almost every story had that common thread. Mm-hmm. Almost every story had that common thread of I didn't know, or I thought they were with you. I didn't know where they were. And, that struck me that night. And I said, that's the educator in me. It hit me right away, because that's what education does, right? I mean, education is a way to change perspective. There's two ways you can change your perspective in life. There's only two. You experience something that makes you see the world differently than you saw it before, or someone shares with you a way to look at the world differently than you've ever seen before, and they do it in a way that opens your eyes, which is exactly what an educator is. And so since my perspective changed, obviously through experience, which I don't want anyone else to have to go through. So the only other option we have is education. So like I said, we got to cut through the noise and get that word out. And, now I think it's even more important than ever. So just, constantly reminding people, keep your eyes on your kids and have these other layers of protection, because there's no perfect parent. And, I think we all think we are. I think we all think we're sure of our own, dominance as far as where we stand in our house and what we do with our kids, and that doesn't exist. And that's the eye opener, is that there is no perfect parent. Although all the perfect parents pop out when you hear of any of these accidents. They're all pointing their fingers like, oh, what a terrible person. And I remember I think every drowning story I ever read before we lost Rees, I did the same thing. In fact, actually, 3 weeks before we lost Rees, 3 weeks before, I went to my oldest daughter's second grade parent teacher night. And just before we go in to meet the teacher, a parent had come out and mentioned to me that my daughter's second grade teacher had lost her 18-month-old son to an accidental drowning in their backyard 10 years before. And the first thing I said to my wife is like, oh my God, do you think Abby's safe with her? That was 3 weeks before I lost my own son. So my impression of my daughter's teacher, who, I mean, coincidentally, ironically, or maybe, it was meant to be, right there, I had this experience, this perspective that had changed, because I said, oh my God, do you think it's, is she responsible? And, and then 3 weeks later, the world throws me the same thing. And obviously, the first person who showed up at my house was my daughter's second grade teacher, because she knew exactly what we were going through. And, that perspective, that's the power. And so I don't want people to be my daughter's second grade teacher and us. So the only other way we get that perspective across is through education. And, education can come in so many different forms. It can come in a quick little an acronym that someone can memorize. It can come from an assembly in which you reach these kids. It could come from just casual conversation. But we need to educate. We need to get the word out.
Right.
Yeah, and Rick, that acronym has actually been put into a song too. So there's a version that's attached to the videos on YouTube that you'll share the links to. That there's a very, very catchy song. Parents probably won't like us very much because all the kids will be singing it, but that's the idea, right? We want everybody singing it and remembering.
If you could get them all singing that like they do the Baby Shark song, you guys, we could get the message in front. And but I think it's you're talking to the same age group of the kids and the families who like the Baby Shark, or whatever the song is. And I know our kids and grandkids love that song too. But again, you're communicating to those people and those children. And so, we really just need to share this out constantly, just put it out and get it in front of everybody. There's 2.45 billion active users on Facebook. My goal by the end of this decade is have a water safety message. It doesn't matter if it's yours, mine, I don't really care. But every single day to have a water safety message show up on their newsfeed on Facebook.
That would be great.
I mean, it's 2.45 billion active users, in the world on Facebook. I mean, there's only 360 million people here in the United States. I mean, if we could do that just here in the United States, just keeping it in front of people all the time. And, I think we will begin to be able to move the needle. I mean,
and remember one thing too, that people forget is that kids are amazing. They're like sponges. They remember everything, and they come home and what do? They educate mom and dad. They educate the parents and caregivers. They hear this song or they watch that video. Guess what they're going to do? They're going to repeat something in that video to their mom and their dad, and they're going to be like, "Oh no, Splash said not to do that, or Rees said not to do that." You know what I mean? And right. That's what you need, and that's the importance of these children and the younger generation, because they'll help educate.
Experience that with my 5-year-old. Because it's cool to have that ability to see this. I've never actually given her the water safety presentation, but she's seen me working on this stuff enough that she's heard the song. And the funny thing is I was editing a video for Bobby and I for the NDPA, and it has the song in it. And my 5-year-old comes upstairs and starts singing it, and she's singing it to me. And I'm just looking at her. I'm like, do you like that song, sweetie? She's like, yeah, Daddy, because it's easy. It's kind of like the Baby Shark song. And it's funny because everyone who hears the song, they say the same thing to me, like, oh my God, it's stuck in my head now. Mm-hmm. And which is what we want. I mean, honestly, that's what I want. My friend who does all the illustrations for me for everything we do, his name is Adam Smith. I had to send over to him because we're developing a coloring book that's based on all this too. And when I sent him over the coloring book, I said, "Oh, I really want it based on our swim video, and I really want it on the water safety video." And I said, "I want the aspects to represent Splash, the acronym." I said, "So can I send you over the song just so you get an idea?"
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I sent him the song, he watched it. He emails me right away. He goes, "Oh my God, I can't get the song out of my head." I'm like, "That's what I want. That's what I want. That's awesome. Best news I've heard."
This is a great step in the right direction. Rethinking how we're going to get this message out, and then when the schools open up, hopefully they're beating your doors down because they've heard all this talk online, and now they'll invite you in with open arms to come into their schools with your assembly programs, and we can help. Maybe we can get those assemblies all throughout the country. That would just be awesome.
Well, that's what Streamline Brands is trying to do by partnering with us, and that is the hope. So hopefully we'll have some very exciting big things to come once things get back to normal.
Yeah, I have to put out another big thanks to them because they have been on board since, I spoke at the United States Swim School Association conference back in the end of September, and that's where Streamline got introduced to me, and that's when they sat down with me right away and said, let's get behind this, and their first thing was, let's get behind this so it's for everyone, not just for Streamline schools, but for everybody. And they've been adamant about that from the beginning, that this isn't just for us. This is a message that needs to get out, and we want to help you get it out. And to me, to have a business whose job is to make money for their business, to understand that there's a bigger thing out there and be behind that unconditionally, I'm flattered by, and I'm amazed by, and so their support has just been tremendous, and I can't thank them enough, because that's what we need. We need kind of socially responsible companies like this to do this,
right.
To get behind this message.
Right. And Bobby, is there anything that you want to say before or touch on that you feel we haven't touched on yet?
No, not really. I mean, obviously, my biggest fear is, like I said, the spike in drownings, and unfortunately, that will not be a number that will be calculated into the numbers from the coronavirus. Mm-hmm. So the effects of the coronavirus, and I just hope that this education and the work that we're all trying to do will put in it. We'll stop that from happening. That's right. my biggest goal.
And we'll make sure also in any of the show notes on any of the recordings too. But if somebody's listening here up to this point here, Bobby, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, I know you mentioned your website and everything in the beginning, but what's your email address, or what's the best way for somebody to reach out to you?
They could reach out to me right through End Drowning Now, Bobby@enddrowningnow.org. Okay. Would be a nice, easy email away, and I'll get back to you with whatever information and however we can help to get this going.
Right. And Rich, how could somebody, if they want to talk to you more about that, how could somebody get in touch with you?
Honestly, part of the same way. I mean, they can go to enddrowningnow.org, and that'll also get to me, or get through to me. Our website's linked through there. They can go to our website, which is www.ReesSpechtLife.com, but spelled the way we do it, ReesSpechtLife.com. Another way they can get information is, like you, Rich, we do a podcast. I'm doing a podcast with Eric Lupton from Lifesaver Pool Fences. We do that podcast now every Thursday together, and obviously a big aspect of what we do every week will be water safety and just child safety in general. So it's just another way trying to get the word out. But if they want to contact me, they can go to our website, or they can call me directly. It's 631-353-9924. So,
all right.
Well, this is going to be all over YouTube. And hopefully your phone rings off the hook.
That would be great.
At least they're good calls.
Yeah.
Not all the spam stuff of, somebody trying to sell you some car insurance for some car you don't own. But no, this has been good, very informative, a lot of great information. Heather says here she wants to thank you both for your hard work and your dedication. So I know Rich, you and I I was at the NDPA conference a couple years ago. I don't think we actually met in person. We probably passed each other. Bobby, I know we've met in person at conferences and stuff. So, you know, it's sad not being able to get together here starting this weekend through next week. But, you know, through our work, we can still be able to get together like this and share our stories, share our information, because, you know, it's about preventing what I refer to as the unthinkable. And the unthinkable can be anything in your life, really. But in my case, I've had many things that I probably would never have thought would have happened to me, especially my daughter drowning. But there's a lot of people going through their own situation right now with this whole entire coronavirus. The scary thing is those people that are going through this, being hardest hit, families that are being hardest hit through this whole virus situation, they very well could also suffer a drowning within their family at the same time when they're dealing with all this other stuff. And at that point in time, they haven't focused on water safety because they've been focusing on the coronavirus, because that's taken all their attention. But we need to also be attentive to the water safety, especially those people who have backyard pools, or going to the beaches and taking in water. And like you said, there was a drowning in Texas just in bathtub. In-home water safety, bathtubs, mop buckets, toilets, all those things. And Rich, I know with you working with Eric, he has the child safety store, and I know he has a lot of those products. So if somebody's looking for, you know, safety products, things like that, to be able to the alarms, all these things, I know Eric has all those, right?
Yeah. The child safety store has all of that. You know, and it's not just for, you know, drowning prevention too. I know Eric's working really hard on, you know, the hot car problem, where, you know, kids getting locked in hot cars, and they're working on something to help prevent that too. So, you know, they're on top of all those aspects. But, you know, Eric has reminded me still, though, that the number one cause of accidental death of children under 5 is still drowning. And, you know, that's a number I want to change. I don't want, you know, I don't want it to be number one. Let's get out of the top 10, you know, because it's, as Bobby keeps saying, and it's absolutely true, drowning is 100% preventable. Right. But, you know, you can't prevent that which you don't know. So, you know, how do you prevent it? You eliminate the ignorance.
Yeah, and the layers of protection, you know, I mean, isolation fencing around pools. I mean, we work with Lifesaver Fence, but we work with Pool Guard fencing of United States USA Pool Guard also. So, I mean, just doing the things that you can do around your house, and knowing and getting the education, I think makes a huge difference.
Right. And I know both of you guys have this information. So everybody, if you want to go to their website, we'll have their websites there also in the recording and in the show notes and everything. So guys, I really thank you for your time. And I know you're busy. You've got other things to do except sit here and talk to us. So want to thank you for your time, guys.
Rick, thank you. And thank you for all the work that you do, Rick. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right, be safe. You and your family be safe. Everybody be safe out there.
Bye.